Welcome, everyone, to the midweek instant reaction episode of Revolution Recap. We chose a great time to record immediately after the game. The Revolution dropped a home game against the Montreal Impact 3-0. The scoreline does not reflect the story of the game, as it was 0-0 for the majority of the match before Cody Cropper mishandled a free kick in the 79th minute, leading to the back-breaking goal by Shamit Shome. Anthony Jackson Hamill added a pair of goals just to add some salt in the wound and make everyone a little bit more miserable for the drive home. And the Revs officially end their 3-game homestand with 3 points in 3 games and also a whole lot of shame. I'm Greg Johnstone. Joining me is Sean Donahue. Sean, how are you holding up?
You know, I think somebody sent us a question or a comment that we should spend the whole episode talking about the Spurs, and that sounds like a better idea to me right now.
Yep, right off the bat, let's get it out of the way. I mean, I in a way, I don't blame you, and I kind of almost would rather talk about the Spurs right now, but, you know, we did make a promise to our listeners that if we got 5 reviews on iTunes, that we would give them a podcast about the Revolution. So I think we are contractually obligated. We're legally obligated, I was saying. As a lawyer, you should know that, Sean. So unfortunately, we have to be miserable for the next 30 to 40 minutes.
What about the guy that asked us to do a Bruins podcast, though? Can we revisit that?
A couple weeks ago, we were asked, have we ever considered being a Bruins podcast? Actually, we have a number of suggestions of what else we can cover. We'll get to that when we get to the Twitter questions segment of our show. But there's a lot of good suggestions of what other things we could talk about because the Revolution season is not going great. Not going great. And, you know, you can't say this team doesn't keep surprising you because it feels like we hit a low point again and again and again. And somehow, some way, they find a way to just really just kick you in the groin. So, I mean, hats off to them for finding new ways and being creative to create misery for their fans.
You know, I've been covering this team since 2002 and following the team since 1997, and I just can't remember, you know, there have been a lot of bad years. I can't remember anything like this before. As bad as they've been at times, the feeling of this season and the feeling of, you know, that I don't see how they're going to turn it around. It's just pretty unique.
Yep. I'm still in shock. I was telling you before we started recording that I don't even really remember the last 2 goals because after that 79th minute, I was just in such a state of shock that I could not believe that Cody Cropper, after the game he had that mistake. I'm still in a bit of shock. So if I seem a little distant or just really down the dumps, that's why I'm still shaking off the shock of that that goal. I'm still astonished. But Sean, what was your key takeaway from this disaster of a game?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways I can go with this one, and I think 2 of them are kind of intertwined in a way. You know, the first one is that Friedel just doesn't know how to motivate his team. You know, how many games this season have they started so poorly? And that was the real. You know, there's a lot of stories from this game. There was the Cropper miscue, but the team started really poorly in this one, and I think a lot of that goes down to Friedel's inability to motivate the team. At halftime, again, he was talking about how, you know, we're second to every ball, and, you know, it's just the same type of thing we've heard time and time again this season, and that's on the coach to find a way to get his team motivated. They just came off of, you know, an important 3 points that they got on Saturday. You know, they were going against a Montreal team that, you know, if you hadn't read about it, they were supposed to fly out to Foxborough yesterday, and they had to wait, or the day before the game, they had to wait 5 hours at the airport, 5+ hours, and didn't get to go. And then today they chartered a flight, and then they were stuck on the tarmac for a couple hours today before they could fly out to Foxborough. And we knew Piatti was going to be out, but then on top of it, Ty Dare, who's their second designated player, was also out. So, you know, arguably their 2 best players. Certainly Piatti is their best player, and Ty Dare, I think there's a case to be made as their second best player, were out for this game. They made 4 changes from the lineup that lost 3-0 last weekend, and the guys they brought in were largely young and unexperienced guys. There were a couple guys in this lineup that were making just their second start at the professional level. There were, you know, 4 guys in this team that were 21 or younger in the starting 11. This was a game that the Revolution had no excuse not to win. You know, yes, they were coming off short rest, the Revolution, but Montreal was coming off short rest too in a much worse situation with the travel and with the guys that were missing. This was a game the Revolution should have gone out and dominated. Montreal has had 4 games on the road this season without Piatti. They've managed to combine 5 shots on target in those 4 games. This game, they had 5 shots on target in the first half and 9 shots on target overall. So almost double the amount of shots on target that they've had in the 4 prior road games without Piatti they had in this one game. That is just absolutely terrible and pathetic, and I think a lot of that falls on Friedel and not having these guys ready to go from the opening whistle.
Yeah, and you mentioned too that Montreal made some changes. What's interesting is that the Revolution kind of played their exact same lineup, exact same formation as Saturday against the Red Bulls, which worked. They got the 3 points. It was a 1-0 victory. It wasn't an offensive clinic by any means, but they ran out the same lineup. The same bench too. There was no changes in the 18, no changes in the 11, and it seems like maybe that rotation in the lineup, I know a lot of people might read that as you're playing your reserves, you're playing your backups. I think that coming out of the gate, Montreal might have had a little bit more of an advantage because you did have some fresher legs on the field. You were running up and down the field more, whereas it felt like the Revolution were, coming off of a short week. They seemed a little bit slow. They seemed a little bit on the back foot. What would you say to that? Were you surprised to see the exact same lineup, and do you think that might have created a bit of a disadvantage for the Revolution?
Yeah, I think it might have, and it's also you mentioned Montreal and what they did. Is we've talked a lot this year about leadership on the Revolution, and again going to the motivation thing, Montreal was missing a lot of their leaders. They were missing Piatti, like I said. They're missing Taider, like I said. They're missing Bakary Sagna, the veteran defensive right back that they have on that team. That's been really good for them. He was out for this game too on the bench. Probably for rotation reasons. So a lot of their leadership wasn't even playing in this game. But yeah, I think it did work to their advantage. They had a lot of young guys that were out there trying to prove themselves and earn more minutes. And they certainly looked a lot more motivated and a lot more ready to go from the opening whistle. It was something to watch. Okwan, I'm going to completely botch his name. The 20-year-old left winger, 21-year-old left winger from Nigeria on Montreal that was really tearing up Farrell for a lot of this game. But yeah, I think the changes worked in Montreal's favor, and the Revolution really went all in this game. The fact they stuck with exactly the same 18 and exactly the same starting 11, tells me that they wanted to go 100% and get 3 points in this game, and perhaps at sacrificing the trip to Sporting Kansas City, and it really backfired.
Absolutely. And yeah, I agree with you. I think they were trying to go for 3 points here, and they were hoping that a similar game plan would work out today. And Montreal came in very, very prepared. You're right. I'm going to take a stab at this guy's name. I'm going to mispronounce it, but Okwan, just going to say the 20-year-old left winger like you.
Number 18.
I mean, he was giving Farrell nightmares all throughout the first half. I mean, it was pretty apparent, too, that they were trying to push the ball in the wings or trap Luis Castillo, not Castillo, Caicedo in the middle of the field, and then kind of exploit the left or right flank on the counter attack. Mostly the left flank. Farrell got burned a little bit too, but you could kind of tell they were trying to do it on the right side too at times. And it was working the first 30 minutes or so. To the Revolution's credit, they did adjust a little bit, but really it felt like the first 30 minutes they were just passing it along the back, trying to pass it into the center to Caicedo one or to Heel, and then there'd be a turnover at midfield, and then there's no one covering the wings because Farrell and Castillo are pushed up. And that's the style of soccer they've been playing all season long. And it's very, very predictable. And we've seen Columbus come in and, just kind of sit back and wait and counterpunch because the Revolution aren't creative enough on the ball. They don't have the possession skills on the ball. They're not creative offensively. So why not just sit back, wait for the Revolution to just pass the ball around, then hit them on the counterattack? Because this transition defense, it's a lot better than it was last season, but it still has its weaknesses. We've seen Columbus do it. We've seen Cincinnati do it. Friedel complained that Cincinnati does it, but it's a really effective method, and Montreal did it very, very well in the first 30, 35 minutes, and it was a miracle they got out of that 0-0. Now the Revolution started kicking the ball long towards the end of the first half, and they started breaking down Montreal at the beginning of the second half. They actually played significantly better in the second half than the first, but scoreline does not reflect it at all. So, I think it's a major failure on Brad Friedel's part they got off on this game on the really, really wrong foot, and it was because of very dumb, predictable reasons that we've seen time and time again that these teams are just going to try to hit you on the counterattack right away.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's just shocking that the Revolution still haven't figured out a way to break down a defense like that. 0 shots in the first half. That's, kind of incredible to me. Again, when they're facing a team that had switched up half of its defense, that was missing its best offensive weapon. There are so many reasons why the Revolution should have won this game, and to see this play out the way it did. And, talk about possession, where Montreal really dominated possession for the first half hour. I like looking at the 5-minute intervals that MLS Soccer makes available. Between the 10th and 15th minute, Montreal had 69% of the possession. Between, I believe it was the 25th and 30th minute, Montreal had 80.4% of the possession. The Revolution turned things around a bit in the second half, despite what happened scoreline-wise, where they fell apart there. But Montreal really dominated that first half, and I know we talk a lot, or the Revolution broadcast team talks a lot about how much possession the Revolution have in the final third and how much possession they have in the box. Montreal was actually dominating in the first half as far as passes attempted in the final third in this game. You don't usually see that with the Revolution. Usually the Revolution, struggle to create chances, but at least they have a lot of possession in the final third. In the first half, that wasn't the case. Again, it changed in the second half, but the Revolution just came out so poorly in the first half. It's just, shocking to me that in the position the Revolution are right now, near the bottom of the standings, finally, hopefully building some momentum with that win over the Red Bulls and going into a game that, everyone gave them every chance to win because of the situation Montreal was in. They just came out so completely flat.
Yep. And I tweeted out a photo of the passing chart in the first half. And I mean, there is no even attempted passes in the middle of the field in the attacking half. It is all middle third. Most of their passes were in the middle third because they were pressing up, because Montreal was sitting back and waiting for a turnover in the middle of the field. They're just passing it back and forth across the middle of the field, and then they tried working it down the side a few times and were unsuccessful at that. So, I mean, they had no successful passing in the middle of the field for a good third of the game. So I give Friedel a little bit of credit. He didn't make any subs at halftime, which I thought was kind of crazy. But they made some adjustments. It looked like Diego Fagundes kind of came back, played a little bit more in the midfield, gave him another body. And they seemed to adjust pretty well coming out of halftime, and they seemed to be in control a little bit of the game until the Cody Cropper error, which we will get to later. But there is no excuse for this team, especially after this conversation, all the talk about mentality, about effort, to come out this flat in this important of a game. You're ending a home stretch, and another win would have really put you back almost in the playoff picture. You still have a really, really tough shot, but I mean, back-to-back wins against New York and Montreal, two teams in the East. This would be a very, very different narrative if they win this game 1-0, and instead to kind of end the homestand like this, and then to go into Kansas City, it looks very, very bleak.
Yeah,
so
good luck with that.
Yeah. My key takeaway, and I don't want to harp on this too much because we have said this every single podcast, I feel like, this season, but I don't understand why these players just don't shoot the ball on target. I have absolutely no idea what is going on. It must be some sort of sick joke. I don't know what it will take to change this crap. Caicedo too, there's a beautiful counter attack with Diego to Caicedo too, back to Diego. He finds Carles Gil. He slides in Caicedo, who has a shot on frame, and then the defender catches up to him. He dribbles around a little bit and then makes this weird sliding shot that wouldn't have gone in even if it did get through, but it didn't get through because the defender easily blocked it away. Teal Bunbury had the ball at his feet and again somehow kicks it out for a throw-in, which it's so sad. I don't know what is going on with Teal Bunbury.
9 games in, 1 shot on target for Bunbury and 2 shots out for throw-ins.
I genuinely believe. I mean, we all make jokes, but he's not this bad. And I think once he gets 1 goal, he's going to get some confidence back, and I think we'll see a little bit more. But I don't know if it's just like technical, if he's mechanically doing something wrong. But my goodness, it curled the wrong way. I am stunned that we saw that again. And, man, I just feel terrible. He was also super ineffective the entire game. That's not necessarily his fault, but he had 13 touches at halftime. Fagundes had 17 touches at halftime. So neither of them were involved really at all in the first half. So I hope Bunbury can get it together soon and even just put a decent shot on target, because the one shot he has was that header that he kind of scuffed, and he was standing right next to the goal. So, boy, like again, another blunder from him. As I say, I hope he figures it out soon, because he's a key part of this team. And then probably the most aggravating part of the night was Edgar Castillo. Beautiful ball worked in. Caicedo too. Perfect pass to Castillo, cutting through the box. Really should have one-touch shoot, and Castillo overthinks it, holds on too long, gets the ball knocked off of him. I don't know what it's going to take to get this team to just shoot the ball. I almost would rather them take a shot that's 3 feet high of the net, because they're at least trying. They all seem scared to shoot the ball. And did they have a single shot on target this game, Sean? I haven't seen the final
Zero.
stats. So I don't know what it's going to take here. I have absolutely no idea what it's going to take for this team to regain their confidence and just shoot the ball when they need to shoot the ball. And even last game, Panilla's shot wasn't even that good, and it went in. If you buy a ticket, sometimes you win the lottery. Just shoot the ball on target.
We're getting to the point now where we joked about your Juan Caicedo over under of 5 goals, and we all thought it was probably going to be over, and then you revisit it, and now we're all starting to think it might be under. You might get to a couple more games, you might start thinking about over under Revolution strikers 5 goals.
I mean, right? I think you have to take the under right now. I mean, how much of the season's passed by 20%? I mean, this is pathetic. It is pathetic, and every single person in that locker room knows it too. Everyone is. Even Feldman on the Caicedo chance. That was
26% of the season is gone.
I mean, Feldman. Oh, that was unorthodox. Like, I mean, my goodness. I have no words to how just dreadfully awful the offense on this team is, and I don't know why they're this awful. Because you look at it on paper, coming into the season, they have so many attacking options. They have so many guys. I mean, Fagundes scored 10 goals last year. Bunbury scored 12. Caicedo too is a TAM2 signing. I'm also confused why they bring on Caicedo too, and the Revs brought him on because they think he can hold up the ball better than Bunbury or whatever. I'm sorry. Every time you want him to have as few touches as possible. He is so awkward with the ball. He can pass the ball. He can hold up the ball a little bit. But man, there are so many times where if he has the ball and he has times to think, it's not going to lead to a scoring chance. So I don't know what is going to fix this team. I think this goes way beyond tactics. This is an insanely poor, inefficient offense that I don't know how you're going to fix.
Well, what happened that made Diego Fagundes, you said Teal Bunbury again, I think he had 11 goals last year. Christian Penilla had 12 goals last year. Did these guys become bad overnight? Like, what happened? They were guys that could finish, and now they don't seem to be able to finish. I don't understand how that changed from last season to this season. Well, the tactics are different and the roles are different. But did all those players just instantly become terrible finishers? I don't really believe that.
Yeah. I am genuinely, there's no words to describe how bad this offense is and what's happened here. What exactly has happened here? Is it just no confidence? Are they? I don't know. As I said, I didn't want to harp too much on
Bunbury, I think it's probably no confidence because he's a guy that I think relies heavily on confidence. And throughout his career, he's been a streaky player where he goes on runs and he scores a lot of goals, and he goes on runs where he doesn't score anything. So with him, I don't think it's out of character for him to have a streak like this where he doesn't score, and then go on a streak where maybe he scores 10 goals in 12 games and then disappears again. But Fagundes, he's a streaky player in a different sense, but his finishing usually is there. At least he's putting shots on target. And Penilla certainly last year he had a couple streaks where he wasn't scoring, but it's just shocking that all of those guys right now that were pretty productive offensive players last season can't get it done.
Well, and I mean Edgar Castillo, who last year was a very, very productive left back for the Rapids. He's been playing all game. He's been crossing the ball into the box. He's looked fine. He's had a couple of good games back to back. He gets the ball in the box. Shoot. He has a clear shot goal. He's within the box. Shoot the ball. Like, but instead he tried getting around the last defender. I don't know if they're being taught to try to tap the ball in and to get it, right down to the goal line, or always look for one more pass. I don't know, but everyone on this team is hesitating. Shoot the ball.
Well, and honestly, up until this game, I thought Castillo was one of the few guys that wasn't hesitating to shoot the ball when he got an opportunity. So that was surprising to see in this one.
Yeah, that's what I mean. What else could he have wanted out of that chance? I don't know. Okay, so let's go to the other side of the field and let's talk about the goalkeeper who had a great night for the first 78 minutes of the game. Sean, this is my fault. This one's on me because I tweeted out that we were now a pro Matt Turner and Cody Cropper podcast after his double save in the opening minutes of the game. Obviously, he literally and figuratively dropped the ball on this game. So, Sean, what were your thoughts on Cody Cropper's performance tonight? And I should add too, is he getting another start or is it Turner time?
So my thoughts as far as Cody Cropper goes is for all this season, I've been kind of waiting for him to have a really good game. Even last week he had some errors, and throughout the season, I thought he's made the saves he should be making, and the goals he's given up, he couldn't really do much about. So there's been no reason to bench him. His distribution was a ton better than Brad Knight, and overall, even with a few flubs. And there's really been no reason to bench him. But I didn't think he'd made any spectacular saves. This first half of this game, and this game overall, until the 78th minute, I thought we were finally seeing the Cody Cropper that I'd been waiting to see, one that was making, fantastic, phenomenal saves, being acrobatic, athletic, in that second half, I forgot what minute it was, where he made those two quick saves in quick successions that really kept the Revolution in the game early. This was the best performance I'd ever seen out of Cody Cropper until that 78th minute. So it was shocking to see him make that flub after such a good performance. But to go further to your point of will we see him again next week? I think we should see him next week. I feel bad that he made that horrible flub in the 78th minute because he was the only reason the Revolution had kept the game scoreless up until that point. I think the Revolution deserved to be losing that match after the first half, and if not for Cody Cropper, they would have. And it was a horrible error, but I think it would be very harsh for Friedel after the season that Cody Cropper's had so far, and after the first half that he had, and after how well he did after that one terrible error to just pull him after that. I think you have to have some sort of leash with your number one keeper, especially after the amount of games that he's played now this season, and give him a pass for that one error. If he goes into the next game and makes that same mistake again, then sure, pull him, go right to Turner. But until then, I think he should still play. But with that said, if Brad Friedel does pull him for the next game, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, traditionally, it seems like this is a mistake that Brad Friedel pulls his keeper and someone else in. He seems like he has a very, very short leash with his keepers, and he also seems like he, confidence kind of carries over game to game to game. And we kind of saw Matt Turner towards the end of the year kind of be a little sluggish and kind of lose some confidence with some plays. So I could totally see something where Cody Cropper, giving up 3 goals late in the game, one of which is directly his fault. I could see that being a reason to rotate in Matt Turner and see how long he can hold it until he makes a mistake too. But I will say, Cropper had a great goal. You mentioned earlier this season he's been making the saves he needed to. His expected goals average or expected goals to goals allowed. It was goals allowed minus expected goals allowed. He was in the negatives, which is a good thing. He was negative 0.5 expected goals allowed. Yeah, I think I did that right. I probably confused everyone. I'm still in shock, guys. I'm sorry about this. But the point is, he was performing slightly above average, slightly above a replacement goalkeeper. I'll put it that way. So he was kind of coming in, doing well, and then at the beginning of this game, he was performing very, very well. But as I say, that was such a huge error towards the end of the game, and it cost you probably at least 1 point, potentially 3, because the Revolution were in control of that game, and all the air out of their tires were coming. That was just gone after that. So I could see Matt Turner starting next game. I would not be shocked to see him in there.
Yeah, no, I think there's a good chance it does happen, but I don't think that's the right move yet. And I say that as someone that thinks that Matt Turner does have the highest ceiling of the Revolution goalkeepers, even after this performance by Cropper and those saves that he made. But I think it just sends the wrong messages if after one big mistake, you pull your goalkeeper like that.
Yep. Sean, you also want to talk about Michael Mancienne a little bit?
Yeah. So the second goal in particular, I thought Mancienne again was caught very flat-footed, and it's something that we've seen throughout the season. That Mancienne on crosses, he's in a position where he takes one step, he can block the cross, but he just stands there. And that's what we saw in the second goal. I think the Revolution were, again, kind of in shock from that first goal. But the second goal was preventable. I don't think that cross was particularly fast. And Mancienne takes one step, he blocks it. but instead he just stood there. He was in position in front of Hamill. Overall, that was a poorly defended play. I think Andy Baba or Mancienne needed to keep a closer eye on Jackson Hamill than they did there. But it's just a recurring pattern from Mancienne that I've noticed a lot this season on plays like that, where he's in a position to step forward and block across, but he just gets caught flat-footed and stands there. And that's really disappointing from a guy that's getting paid as much as he is, to see that. Overall, I don't think he had a horrible game, but that goal just stood out as something that we've seen several times now this season. That I observed. And what's actually, on the flip side, I thought Mancienne was one of the most dangerous offensive weapons for the Revolution in this one. He had a couple of shots, and they were actually two of the Revolution's closest shots in this game. So offensively, Mancienne and Andy Baba have been some of the better players for the Revolution. Defensively, I don't think this was Mancienne's best night, particularly on that one play. And I don't think it was Andy Baba's best night either, on a few different plays.
Well, so I think my big weak spot along the back line was Andrew Farrell, who we can touch. We've already touched on him a little bit. I don't think we need to really hammer it into too much. But Mancienne and Andy Baba did kind of do some decent prevent defense towards the end. They did clear a couple of dangerous low crosses after Farrell got burned in the early minutes, and they seem to have improved their emergency defending a whole lot. And I will say, too, that their set-piece defending has improved a lot this season as well. So I think a lot of people will talk about the back line and kind of say negative things, but having the same feelings as last year. But really, I mean, in my opinion, we have seen some strides from the back line. But you're absolutely right. There are times where it seems like, when they're not motivated a lot, Mancienne, as you say, maybe a little bit of lack of effort there on that second goal. As I say, I was personally shell-shocked. I don't really remember everything. I kind of blacked out for the last 30 minutes of that game there, or last 20 minutes of the game there. So, but we've talked about this before too. He's the captain, so you really want to see the captain kind of pick up your team and kind of get people back in it. It's only a 1-goal game; you can still bring a point out of it. And Mancienne looked just as dead as everyone else in the stadium. So yeah, not a very inspiring performance for him. As I say, I'm kind of judging him based on the last 30 minutes. But yeah. Not very positive marks overall. We already talked about JFC and Bunbury a little bit and their kind of difficulty with their lack of finishing. Did you have any other thoughts on Andrew Farrell, I guess, before we get into the
Yeah, no, I did want to touch on Andrew Farrell again because I thought this was, Farrell got a lot of credit, and deservedly so, a couple games ago for his defensive effort. I thought in this game he was really poor. He had that turnover that led to that whole double save sequence where Cropper made. That was a terrible turnover from Farrell that led to it. There were 3 or 4 times where Farrell just got beat by his man. I think the second goal was one of them. He actually he used his recovery speed to kind of get back in position, but he got beat initially on that chance. Offensively and passing wise, it was one of his better games as far as percentages go. But he had some key turnovers that really left the Revs out to dry, and then a couple times where he went in for a tackle and missed, and it really left the Revs out to dry. So for all the plaudits we've been getting into Farrell lately, I think defensively this was one of the worst performances I've seen from him.
Yeah, and I was thinking at halftime too. I didn't tweet this out, but I was wondering, do you bring Brandon Bye in at right back, because he was getting burned down the right side so much that I don't think Brandon Bye could have done a whole lot worse. I know that I feel like Andrew Farrell is a more defensive option, kind of a veteran player, a little bit more stable, but he had one of his worst nights all season long, and I'm sure he'll be the first one to tell you that. They were really going at him there. So, and not even defensively too, but possession-wise, he had a couple of passes that he just had a terrible touch on, and he kind of let the ball go in the midfield. I think he had a couple of missed tackles too. I don't have the stats in front of me, but just a really, really poor night by Farrell. He recovered, he probably was kind of the reverse of Mancienne, where he had a bad starting 20-30 minutes, and then they kind of improved as the game went on. But between this and then the goal a couple of weeks ago where he was playing center back and a player just went around him, he's clearly lost a little bit of a step. And, I question the Revolution's strategy of having him press up as much as they do, because he doesn't seem to be able to get back and respond as quickly as he used to.
No, I agree with that completely, and it's unfortunate. Farrell, I thought, is one of the more solid defenders on the Revolution, and he's shown it at times, but this game in particular was just a tough one for him. And there were, several plays in this game where the Revolution did have some possession in the offensive half, and couldn't do anything with it, and then turned it over and led to quick counterattacks for Montreal. I think most of, Montreal's chances were quick counterattacks when the Revolution, had a little bit of possession and couldn't do anything with it, and then, turned it over. And you mentioned Farrell's tackles. I was just trying to pull this up. Farrell attempted 8 tackles. He was only successful on 4 of them. He was also only 1 for 3 on aerial duels. Committed a foul, and just, generally not a game to write home about for him.
Yep. No, I agree completely. Sean, you want to hop into Twitter questions? We have a lot of depressing questions to tackle today.
I'm ready for it.
Okay, so let's start with the obvious one that I feel like a lot of people are going to ask because it's yet another demoralizing loss, seemingly another new low for this team. But we are getting questions about Brad Friedel's status as the head coach. Mohammed Hussein asked us, should Brad be fired, and what would it take for Kraft to sell the team? We'll tackle Brad Friedel first. Tyler also notes, if you're going to fire the coach before the end of the season, this is the game. This is the game to do it after, right? And then Zach Rhyme asks us, how many more F-ups until Friedel gets sacked? So let's tackle Friedel's status first, and then we can talk about Kraft potentially selling the team. I still think he's getting towards the end of the season, and we've talked before about how it's kind of this awkward stage where you're bringing in a designated player who's not Robert Lewandowski, and he's going to come this season, and he's Brad Friedel's guy, so you can't really let Brad Friedel go. But then once he gets here, is he going to want to stay here after you fire Brad Friedel? So I'm not entirely sure where that stands, but I can't imagine them letting him go before the designated player gets here. I'll say that.
I mean, is that designated player a done deal? Because if so, why haven't they announced it? You can announce a guy that you've signed on a pre-contract if it's, actually a done deal. So maybe it's not a done deal, and maybe part of the reason it's not a done deal is they're thinking about firing Brad Friedel. I don't think that's actually the case, but I'm just throwing that out there. I do think Brad Friedel at least has through June. I think if at the end of June the Revolution are playing like they're playing right now, then I think there is actually a serious chance that he gets let go then. But I can't see them, not giving him another 2 months to try to turn things around. With that said, the more times they get to halftime and you hear Brad Friedel talking about how they were second best every ball in the first half and just repeating the same things over and over again, and the Revolution having the same type of performance over and over again, the more you can't ignore that if you're the front office of the Revolution and trying to figure out what to do going forward. You have to wonder if Brad Friedel can't get his team motivated for a game like this, you have to wonder if he's the right man for the job at this point. But again, I would be shocked if he's, not here at least through June.
Yeah, and I agree with your comments, but I will say one more thing too, which is that, this failure is not all on Brad Friedel. I mean, it's not Brad Friedel's fault that, this team is not shooting when they have clear shots at goal. I mean, hypothetically, if Edgar Castillo shoots the ball, there's a rebound and it goes in, or Edgar Castillo scores on his clear path to goal. I mean, then the Revs are up 1-0. If if it wasn't for a Cody Cropper mishap, there's a very good chance that they keep a clean sheet. So I mean, they weren't too far off from 3 points today. It's just there were a lot of errors on the players tonight. Obviously, I think everyone's going to look at the manager because he's the most replaceable person. This game is not all entirely on Friedel. I do think there's a lot of criticisms that we talked about in terms of, the team not being motivated enough. Tactics kind of seemed standard and kind of predictable, where Friedel doesn't really make a lot of adjustments after a win. He kind of plays the hot hand. So, there certainly is a lot of things to criticize Friedel over, but I don't think that this is a game where you have a hot take reaction and you get him out of here. This is a game in May, and I think he's got much more of a leash, and whether or not that speaks to the ambition of the front office or what, I don't know, but I think he's got at least until June. I would say probably beyond that. I think the earliest he's getting fired is kind of around the same time where Jay Heaps is getting fired, and the writing is on the wall for the season. I don't see a managerial change unless they go on a very, very long losing streak.
Well, here's one thought, and I'm just going to throw it out there. You look at the Revolution schedule, if everything was going terribly, the perfect time to move on to a new coach is after the June 2nd game, because the Revolution have 24 days between games at that point, and you're basically giving a new coach, more than 3 weeks to implement his tactics and his strategy on the team prior to that June 26th game. That's your chance to, really take a hard look at the team and turn things around with another coach before it's too late, if you were to do it after that June 2nd game. I think if things are absolutely terrible, you maybe think about doing that, but that's the first opportunity I would think that might happen, and only because it's such an opportune time to make a change if you're thinking that way.
Yep. I would also say, too, that, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit before, too, but I think if you get rid of Friedel, you have to get Burns out as well. I don't think you can go through another coaching change and the same front office, because there seemed to be a major hindrance of the front office. And I think if you do a major change like that, either one, your season is over, or two, as you say, there's a big gap between games where you have a little bit of more time to plan and prepare. So yeah, I don't know. I think they're getting to at least the end of the season. But you bring up a very, very good point about the 3 weeks without games where you might be able to do a mid-season regime change. And also not give up on the season. I should add that a little bit too. In terms of Kraft selling the team, I don't see it. I don't see anything at all. They're already investing in the academy. They've already got that built. He doesn't really have a reason to sell. I know that there are people giving up, $200 million expansion fees, and maybe someone comes along and makes him an offer he doesn't refuse. But I don't see him ever selling the team. At least not for, I don't know. There would have to be a major change for Kraft to kind of change course. But it seems like right now he's perfectly fine being the owner that he is, and keeping this team.
Well, and I'm sure they want to get World Cup games if the U.S. gets the but I'm sure he wants World Cup games then. And every time there is those expansion fees, as you mentioned, he gets a portion of that, and there's revenue sharing in MLS. And I don't see any reason why Kraft would consider selling this team.
And the MLS has to approve it too. So if let's say Kraft does want to sell the team, okay, well, there's no stadium. Where would they play? Because Kraft probably would not let them play at Gillette Stadium anymore. Or I guess he could lease the stadium to them, but you have a stadium issue now. So there's a lot of hurdles over that. Yeah. So Revving Matt asks us, at what point do you guys start covering the Boston Bolts instead?
I just don't think there's enough of those away games on television for us to watch. Is the problem with that one.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we could kind of switch it up to, but I don't have the knowledge for the Boston Bolts. I can't say that there's a whole lot of input I would have, but I will say that if we ever did cover the Boston Bolts, we would have to try to get former Boston Bolt Miles Robinson on the podcast, because he is a loyal Boston Bolt. So kudos to him. Cody Hall asks us, what do you think Jonathan and Robert Kraft are doing tonight? Robert might be meeting with his lawyers. Jonathan might have been at the game, but Robert definitely not there, I would say.
Yeah, Jonathan goes to a lot of games. I admittedly was not there tonight. Midweek games are pretty much impossible for me to go to. I would think there was a good chance Jonathan was there, but I think Robert has more important things on his mind right now.
Yep. Actually, Tyler, on that same line, what are you guys going to be talking about the rest of the season? There's clearly not going to be much competitive Revs soccer to suggest. Chinese Super League is only 7 match weeks in. Maybe we can all follow a team there.
Chinese Super League is a little bit fascinating to me, because they spend all this money on these really expensive, world-class strikers, and they spend no money on defense. So if you're a fan of, terrible defense and great world-class strikers, well, maybe you're a fan of the Revs anyways and sit and watching the opposition. But Chinese Super League might be for you.
I don't know. We'd have to look into Chinese Super League teams and start covering one. Give kind of a weekly update on them. Jay Alexander Dolan asks us, my vote is just to let Sean Donahue talk about Spurs the whole time. Sean, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Are you ready?
I have never been more excited for a Spurs season in my life since I see them in the semifinals against Ajax coming up next week. So if you are not a Spurs fan and you want to watch two underdogs in the Champions League semifinals, now is the time to jump on the bandwagon and become a Spurs fan and root for them against Ajax to get to their first ever Champions League final. That's all I got.
Oh, wow. 12 seconds to spare. Cameron Young asks us, will Somi ever get game time with the current struggles? He can't perform much worse than what is currently happening.
I think we might see Nicholas Firmino play left back before Somi sees the field.
There's more of a chance of them trading back for Kellen Rowe and putting him at left back. There's more chance of Matt Turner playing left back than Somi. I don't necessarily think it's fair either. We were not huge Somi fans, but it's kind of ridiculous at this point that they're not even giving him a shot. I will say though, Edgar Castillo, for the most part, with the not taking that shot aside, I don't have a whole lot of complaints about Edgar Castillo, and I don't know where else you could play Somi other than left back. I don't know who you could move or where you would put them, but it doesn't help Somi that Edgar Castillo is actually putting in some decent performances week in and week out. Castillo is just far and above a much better option than Somi. And even with Castillo out, they did not want Somi in the lineup for some reason. I think if there was ever a week to play him, it was that. So I can't see Somi ever playing a game for the Revolution again. Maybe U.S. Open Cup, or probably the Chelsea friendly. We'll probably see him get some minutes. But he's done something that has just buried him below the depth chart at every single position. I'm not sure why. I don't know.
Maybe it's because he's funnier than Friedel.
Oh, that's true. He made a joke. I don't know if we've actually gone through this joke, but 2 or 3 people on the Far Post podcast have named Somi as the funniest player on the team, which is kind of funny. He seems like a very, very well-liked guy, but I don't know. He's the Johnny Gomes of the Revs, where you don't really remember anything that he does on the field, but he's the clubhouse guy. So, do I go wholesale on the hard stuff after the debacle, or stick to beer because it's a work night? I say you just call out, do whatever, go out, have fun. This is bad. This is a bad result for the Revs. So I call in sick. It's pretty, what is it, April? You still got sick days this year. Call out, go all out. This earns a going all out performance, I'd say.
See, I don't know. I feel like this is one of those nights where you got to moderate yourself a little bit, stick to the beer, and then Saturday be prepared for an absolute bloodbath, and that's when you got to have the hard alcohol ready. Because if you go hard today, what are you saving for Saturday?
Yeah, that is true. You need to pace yourself because there is probably another loss in embarrassing fashion against Kansas City. So that's a very good point, Sean. Jake Katniss asks us, I'm on a big cricket kick right now. World Cup is a few months away. There's that team in Bangladesh, that basically uses the Midnight Riders logo. So, Sean, any thoughts about moving to cricket as a potential podcasting topic?
I do remember seeing that team's logo. That was a complete ripoff of the Midnight Riders, which is hilarious. And I think we should jump on that bandwagon if we're going to go the cricket route. But what was there was another sport that I discovered this week that was in I got some email about some Swedish sport or something where there's like a combination of like golf and baseball or something where like, I don't know, I was thinking about becoming a fan of that sport. I can't remember the name of it, but if you haven't seen it, you should look it up. It's some weird combo of like golf and baseball where people like try to swat your ball out of the air when you like tee off. So I was thinking about that sport as my next choice.
You know what else we could do? I remember we went to the hurling game a few years ago. That was pretty fun, and we could get press passes for the hurling game that they do at Fenway. Do they still do that? They do it every November, right?
Yeah, it already happened. Wait, it happened back in November. Yeah, I didn't go this year.
Yeah, so you could just get press passes for that. I think that'd be pretty cool. Hurling's pretty awesome.
My cousins in Ireland call it hockey crossed with murder. So
I mean, I'm sold. Shane asks us, I have many questions. Let's start with, why do I spend my money on season tickets for this team? Great question.
Yeah. Based on this season, that is a good question because I don't think I'd want to pay to watch this team.
I'm going to answer the same way I answered why they don't shoot the ball and just say, I have no idea. No idea. I don't know. No. We got another, do you think Brad Friedel will be sacked mid-season question? And this person has changed their name on Twitter to hashtag Friedel out. So it's going well in New England. Let's see what we got here. I know that this is a very pro-Turner /Cropper/Knighton podcast, but at what point do we need to consider jumping off the goalkeeper carousel and start spending money on a proven option between the sticks?
I still don't think when you talk about all the problems with the Revolution that goalkeeper is anywhere near the top of the list. Again, if the Revolution stick with Cropper a few more games, I'm okay with that. If the Revolution switch to Turner, I think he can get the job done. Knighton is serviceable. I think you know what his ceiling is. You know what his floor is. He's obviously the most proven of the guys because he's been around the longest. A fantastic, phenomenal goalkeeper could help the Revolution. But if I'm prioritizing what the Revolution need, that's so far down the list that it's not really even entering the conversation.
Seth from the Bent Musket asks us, why did you guys bail on Matt Turner? And he's probably replying to a tweet where I said that we were officially a pro Matt Turner and Cody Cropper podcast. I guess he kind of took that as a little bit of a betrayal for Matt Turner. But I just want to say that officially that I felt at that time that we could make room for Cody Crawford because he was putting in a great performance. I think that's on me. I think that's my fault. I probably ruined the game for everyone tonight, so I jinxed it.
Yeah,
so
you definitely jinxed it.
But we'd never turn on Matt Turner, or at least I wouldn't. You kind of turned on Matt Turner last season. So, but it's Turner time this year probably. So hop back on the Turner train, Sean, and everyone listening. 0 goals rest of the season. 0 goals allowed. Chris Ryan asked us, Boston City FC or New England Revolution. Not sure if he's asking who would win or if we should cover Boston City FC, but their season does start this weekend. They play at Hartford, rivalry game right out of the gate. So anyone that wants to, I believe that game is during the day too. So if you want a local team that might win, I believe Boston City FC's games are streamed for free. Any input, Sean?
I mean, Boston City FC for a NPSL club is run very well and very professionally. So if you're looking for a lower division team to follow, they are an interesting team to follow. But if the question is Boston City FC or the New England Revolution, who would win in a match, I'm not ready to go that far yet and say Boston City FC. Things are bad, but they're not quite that bad.
Seth from the Bent Musket also asks us, let's say Friedel is let go this season. Who would you appoint as the caretaker? I like the idea of Jermaine Jones or Charles Joseph.
Interesting. If I were to guess who gets appointed, I would guess Paul Mariner. But who would I like it to be?
Someone actually said that. Someone actually said pull Paul Mariner out of the booth. They actually said to be his assistant, because this actually led to a Twitter conversation that I'm now just catching up on. But someone actually did suggest Paul Mariner to move down to the field.
That would be my guess of who it would actually be. And do I think it would be an upgrade from Friedel? Yes. Do I think it would be the right choice? Not so sure. I would really like to see a guy like Steve Ralston get a chance with his team. I don't know if that's in the cards, but if I had to pick somebody that I'd like to see get a chance with his team, it would be him. And just personality-wise, from knowing what Steve Ralston was like as a player and talking to him a lot when he was a player, he strikes me as pretty much the exact opposite of Brad Friedel, which I think would be perhaps a good thing for this team right now if they were to make a change.
Someone wants us to comment. There was a Twitter comment that said, and I'm going to edit this because we don't have an explicit tag, a staggering pants pooping by the Revs there. Wow. And someone says, can we discuss the accuracy of this observation? I would say very accurate. Yeah,
no disagreement here. And I think it was Jake Katniss last week that said, are the Revolution pants? And we forgot to answer his question. But along the same lines, maybe that was 2 weeks ago, but along the same lines, yes.
Let's see what we got here. It looks like everything else is commenting about the caretaker manager. It seems like everyone wants Brad Friedel gone, which doesn't speak very well to his tenure here. Yeah, looks like that's it. We're kind of going this as this goes. Normally I kind of write them down. Someone else, Colin McIntyre, asked us, when does Kraft sell? We already kind of tackled that one. So yeah, we kind of hit the major questions of what else we want to cover and when will Brad Friedel be fired. I think those are the main talking points that we needed to get into tonight. So I think we're all set here. Sean, no news from this week that I think we have to cover. There were some transfer rumors that were pretty much trollery. I don't think we really need to go into that at all. Ever.
Yes, let's avoid that.
So it was a joke. It was a joke. I actually texted you and I said, even if this is real, like what Kraft would have to still sell equity to Bayern Munich in the team because the transfer fee for Lewandowski would be way too high for him to ever step foot on the field for the Revolution.
Are you saying the Revolution are not going to compete with Real Madrid, Manchester United, Chelsea, and Paris Saint-Germain in transfer conversations? Are you saying the Revs are not on that level yet?
No. I think Corey Lewandowski has more of a chance of playing for the Revs. Yeah. I mean, we don't need to go into that, even though we just kind of did. Sean, do you have any final thoughts to wrap this podcast up?
I'm actually just curious, since we're doing a midweek podcast and there's a game on Saturday, what you think the lineup's going to look like against Kansas City, because I have some thoughts, and I think the Revolution, I know I talked about it before and kind of called it the all-hustle lineup that we saw Brad Friedel put out there with guys like DeJuan Jones and Brandon Bye and more of a flat 4-4-2. And my guess is that we see something like that in Kansas City after this game, because I think a lot of guys are going to need rest. I think Edgar Castillo is going to need rest. He just came back from an injury, and now he's played 90 minutes in 2 games in quick succession.
So many time.
Again, if there was ever a time for him, it would be now, but I don't think there's any chance that that's going to happen. But I'm just curious if you have thoughts on what the lineup might look like on Saturday, given what we've seen these past two games and the really quick turnaround?
I really don't know. And normally after a loss, Friedel mixes it up. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's predictable too, because whenever we have a loss, it seems like he comes out with a totally different lineup. He tries different things, and after a win, you can kind of expect the exact same thing. So he's unpredictably predictable that we're going to see something different. I think you might see more of a 4-4-2. I think DeJuan Jones comes back somehow. He's been out of the 18. That just seems like something he would do, where he throws a guy that's been out of the 18 the last 2 weeks back into it, expecting a bit of a spark too. I wouldn't be shocked to see the young guys in the game. I wouldn't be surprised to see Tayon Buchanan start somewhere. I don't think we're seeing Teal Bunbury and Fagundes start up top again. There is no chance that is happening.
Definitely not.
I can say that for certainty. But in terms of what formation, I'm not even going to try to guess because it is such a wild card. So.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I'm still numb from. I can't believe that was an hour ago. I literally just stared at the wall for the next 5 minutes, and then the second goal went in, and it kind of broke me out of that coma. This was a stunning game for the Revs, and I am speechless. I've been talking about it for an hour, but you know what I mean. Figuratively, I am speechless. Sean, I do want to note that for our listeners of the podcast, it might have sounded like I was trying to remember something. It's because we did forget to mention something. Sean, did you want to say anything about Diego Valeri and his accomplishment that he from last weekend?
Oh, yeah. He had a very impressive career score of he's now at 69 goals and 69 assists after last weekend. So I thought that was, pretty good, wouldn't you say?
It's a very nice career he's put together. I will say that.
Do you think Brandon McCarthy would tell him he should probably retire now?
No, absolutely no one is getting that joke. Absolutely no one is getting that joke.
I tried.
So I will explain it. But if I remember correctly, I think Brandon McCarthy, who was a former pitcher for multiple teams, he ended his career with exactly 69 wins and an ERA of 4.20. And he pointed that out on Twitter that he felt obligated to retire when he saw his stat line. So that is the running joke there.
We're a very mature podcast.
No one would have gotten. That is very well done, Sean. I actually am going to end on a bit of a positive note. Sean, I know you've been following the team a lot longer than I have. Do you happen to remember a game on April 17th, 2004? The San Jose Earthquakes beat the Revolution 3-1. Landon Donovan had 2 assists for the Earthquakes. Taylor Twellman scored the lone goal for the Revolution. I don't know if you remember that game at all. Do you have any memory of that game?
I do not.
It was an insanely long time ago, and I just wanted to point out that game where Landon Donovan had 2 assists against the Revolution playing for the San Jose Earthquakes, that game took place 3 days before the last time the Toronto Maple Leafs moved on to the second round of the NHL playoffs. So I want to just end it on a positive note. The streak continues, and I couldn't happen to a more deserving group of fans. So go Bruins. We're kind of a Bruins podcast now, so go Bruins. And the streak continues. Can't wait to knock the Maple Leafs out of the first round next year.
And go Celtics.
Last time that Toronto advanced in the playoffs, the Red Sox, the curse of the Bambino was still intact. So I was looking up facts from 2004 today, and I just want to kind of point out how long ago that was and how long that fan base has been miserable. So just by comparison, I think we can feel a little bit better, right?
I just have to say one last thing because Seth just tweeted it out. Montreal had 9 shots on goal tonight, as we talked about. The Revolution have 13 shots on goal over the course of their 6 home games. So I just had to bring you back down to earth because I just saw that on my Twitter feed from Seth McComber from the Bet Musket. I couldn't let that one go.
I try to be happy. I have to listen to you talk about the Spurs. We have to talk about the Revolution right after they have this loss, and you just throw that one back in my face. I also can't state enough that Montreal has had 1 goal in their last 4 road games without Piatti. They scored twice in their last 5 games. They had no offense whatsoever, and they really cracked the code today. Astonishing.
Yeah, and their 4 road games without Piatti, they had 1 shot on goal total, and three of them they had only 1 shot on goal in all of those, and then one of them had 2, and they had 9 in this one. So. Yeah.
Rough. Absolutely rough. Apologies if this seemed like a bit of rambling. Obviously, this was a lot less structured. We just kind of started this right after the game ended. So I wanted to thank everyone who did leave us a review on iTunes. It didn't look like we were going to get the 5th review in there, but this morning it came through. So to those 5 heroes out there, thank you very much. There was also immediate regret right after that Cody Cropper goal where I kind of realized what happened, and then I thought, oh my God, I have to talk about this. So you can follow us on Twitter at Revolution Recap. You can also like the Revolution Recap page on Facebook. Sean, where can our good listeners follow you on Twitter?
You can follow me at Sean L. Donahue. And just to add to our great 5 people that gave us a 5-star reviews, it's actually up to 6 people now. So even better.
Oh my goodness! Wow, 6 people listened to our entire podcast last week. At least that's impressive. But we always enjoy the feedback too. So even if you don't review us over iTunes, if you want to send us a message on Twitter with any constructive feedback of what you guys want to hear more or less of, we're always open to that sort of thing. But even though the bribing period is over, we encourage you to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. The Revs hit the road next week to face off against Sporting Kansas City. As we said, cannot wait. We'll be back with a new episode at our usual time. But until then, thank you everyone for listening, and go Revs.